Hi, everyone. I'm Taylor Combaluzier, a mining analyst at Red Cloud. This session of our Green Energy Conference will feature Consolidated Woodjam Copper. From the company, we have with us Bill Morton, President, CEO, and Director. I'll note that if any attendees have questions throughout the presentation, they can just type them in through the event application, and we'll get to them at the end of the session during the Q&A portion. This presentation is also available on the conference website. And with that, I'll turn it right over to Bill to guide us through the story.
Thank you very much, Taylor and audience. I'm going to talk today about the Consolidated Woodjam Copper's Woodjam project located in South Central BC. This is going to be a spin on today's talk, and that is, again, in accordance with sort of the Red Cloud's theme of this conference, that it's about the green energy component of the project. I think one of the things that I'm just going to move to a slide. We're actually currently drilling out there right now, and this is sort of what it looks like. And I'll talk to this slide in the context of why it's a bit green. I think if you're going to pretend that copper is a green metal, and obviously its industrial applications and society's requirements for it sort of make that fairly obvious. But one of the other parts is, if you're going to develop a copper project, what are you going to have to do infrastructure wise, and what are your other net effects on the environment going to be? Now, I think there's a difference between a project that's going to require a 400 or 500 kilometer road construction into a pristine wilderness area, and one that is half an hour off the pavement. That's where we are. The picture here shows us drilling on our southeast zone, which is the largest copper resource on the property. And you can see that since we started this, the logging has come in here, and we're basically in an area that has pretty well been logged from one extent to the other in the area that most of our activity in this zone has occurred. It's green in its own way too, because in this area, this will green up fairly fast. Given the fact that this is not boreal forest, it will start off with a canopy of grass. Local ranchers will have several years to turn their cattle loose, open range type stuff, and eventually the forest will come back. And so Mother Nature helps us by kind of sticking to this green theme. Again, just another picture of kind of what it looks like. The caribou, for people that aren't familiar with it, one of the major sort of backstops of the economy, in fact, is cattle. And it's good old-fashioned Wild West type open range grazing. This is a project on the road. Things happen that aren't always that static. Some of these trees here, this is it looks like it's a fir tree. It's dead. Something's happened to it. It'll come down. It'll get be a new one come in, and et cetera, et cetera. So it's kind of a perpetual self-sustaining sort of situation. My cautionary statement, I'm not going to spend any time on it. It's on the presentation. I'll make some forward-looking statements, forward-sounding statements, but I don't think they're going to be challengeable. Okay, well, again, where is it? It's in the Caribou. I talked about that. It's a great mining jurisdiction. It has a history of operating mines close to us. The Gibraltar mine, approximately 50 kilometers to our northwest, is one of the lowest cost per unit producers in the world in terms of what it costs them to produce a pound of copper. It's relatively low grade and it still makes lots of money. I think that sort of talks to the environmental thing, that infrastructure is good, and therefore the copper is that much greener. Large land base, we have a very large property. Within it, the resources that we currently have on a copper equivalent basis, copper being 75% of the payable on the property, would add up to something close to 2.5 billion pounds copper equivalent at current prices, and that would be at an equivalent 0.41% copper, taking the gold into account. It's not all in one zone. Some are more copper dominant than others, and to that extent, right now we are actually focusing on one of the copper areas, given that the current surge in the price of copper and the interest in general of the thing. Large property, 64,000 and some odd hectares, which adds up to 250 square miles. I'll do it the other way. Nothing much has changed since I previously talked to some of you about this thing. The share price is a bit better. Stock dynamics of the stock is the same, 121 million shares issued, approximately 23 million shares more in combined warrants and stock options, and cash in short terms that we're down a hair just because we're drilling right now. We're still we have not dipped into this very much. 10 shareholders own over 40% of the company. Experienced team of management. We all have a lot of experience. Pretty much all of us have. It's a combination of having worked for large multinational companies and then the juniors. And so I won't say much more than that. It can be read by anybody that wants to go to it. Okay, again, another picture, what it looks like. This is not a topographically challenging area. It's high plateau country. To date, approximately $35 million spent, most of that by former option partner Goldfields, Johannesburg. They drilled 95,000 meters, 281 holes, and they converted their interest, which they had earned, into the property, into stock. So they now are they are the largest shareholder, owning approximately 16% of the issued capital in the company. Again, the green theme, roads through the property. These are big roads. These are industrial scale roads designed predominantly for logging. Logging trucks nowadays have 2 trailers behind the cab. They're typically plus 50 tons of load on them. So the roads have to be built first class. There's a small royalty on the property in favor of Goldfields, and that can be reduced to a very small royalty for a modest payment of $5 million. Wouldn't be modest today, but it will be modest when we put this thing into production, which I fully believe will happen. Okay, well, just for comparisons, we're going to, apples and oranges, let's apples and apples. These various mines in BC have generally comparable to less than the grade of ours, and they all are working very well right now. They being Copper Mountain, Gibraltar, Mount Poly, and Milligan. Goldfields, why they were interested in this property to a large degree was their belief that it had commonalities with some of the gangbuster copper gold mines in Australia owned by Newcrest, the Cadia ones. Won't get into too much of that. It's a little technical. A lot of work done on the large property, and this is just, I'm not going to talk too much to it, but we use a combination of magnetics and induced polarization to define our targets. But predominantly, this area, as was evident from a few of the shots, does not have a lot of overburden. In fact, you can drive for miles between outcrops. That's both good news and bad news. Good news was it's the explanation why we were able to find it, and somebody didn't find it a century ago. The bad news is, we have to work hard. So there's currently, what does it add up here? I haven't added it up, but anyways, there's well in excess of 120,000 meters of drilling and well over 350 holes already in the property. So there are 2 styles of mineralization. There is one which is hidden underneath this. I don't know how to get this off here. Okay. pull this over. Anyways, there's two styles of mineralization. Technically, it's what we call calcalkaline, which is lower gold but more copper and higher grade, higher tonnage. That's our southeast zone. And the other ones are all predominantly what we would call alkalic. Alkalic deposits would include the Mount Poly project of Imperial Metals, the Galore Creek projects of Teck and company. It would include Newcrest's projects as well. They're typically smaller features than the calcalkaline ones. They have a much higher propensity for having significant gold with the copper. So obviously, at this point in time, the global resource on the property, 262 million tons and change, grading 0.3 copper, 0.11 grams gold. This calculation has got a copper equivalent of 0.4%. It's got 1.7 billion pounds of copper. These are Goldfields numbers. And what isn't shown here is there's 940,000 ounces of gold as well over here, hidden under rigid. That was done in Johannesburg by the resource team at Goldfields, using $16.50 an ounce gold and $3.90 copper. So those are ratios. Basically, what it really means is none of this would change. There is one other resource that is outside what we talk about, and it was not done to 43101 procedures. It was an internal scoping one done by Goldfields, so we'd leave it out because of the sort of the 43101 requirements. So how do we sit grade wise? Our grade on this thing, the total grade would be over here. Obviously, some of the satellite alkalic deposits have a lot of gold with them, and they would have a copper equivalence, pushing sort of 0.7 grams per ton. If you compare those to our peers, from 0.28% at Gibraltar to 0.59% at Mount Milligan. Mount Milligan, on the other hand, is subject to a very onerous streaming agreement, so this will actually pull way down in terms of what is going to Centerra. Red Chris speaks for itself, one of the best ones in the province, shares a lot of attributes with us, we believe. Okay, am I going the wrong way? Okay. So we use geophysics to a large degree, and this is a map of the induced polarization area. Underneath the session host here is an area that we currently are drilling. It's on the presentation. Suffice to say, there's a lot of target area on the property still that hasn't yet been tested. This area in here being one that we're particularly interested in. This one down here, this one we acquired subject or post Goldfields. This area in between here was all, the real target was staked by somebody else. They dropped out. We were managed to be fast enough to get it. Goldfields had drilled 2 holes on both edges of it, but at the time couldn't make a deal. So we have to get in there and see what this is all about. In looking at it again, we're currently drilling out in this area out here. Southeast zone, the largest copper resource. This is what's called a slice of the induced polarization. This is like looking at it at a depth of 200 meters. The pierce points of all of the drill holes. 2 things, I'm not going to talk too much, but the calcalkaline sort of southeast zone shows up as a reasonably coherent bullseye to a degree. These alkalic ones, including the area that we were drilling very successfully most recently, Deerhorn, the IP is a little more difficult to use directly. It's very important, having said that, but these are the pit wall sort of edges that were put on by Goldfields. And we can see that there's lots of room. If we look at Tackham, and they're knowing that there's absolutely no outcrop here. There's a huge area that has a comparable signature and has not in any way been tested, because there is no way of testing it other than drilling it, and we haven't yet got there. The same thing would apply to the Megabuck and the Deerhorn area. And actually, there is a new IP target here that this area hadn't been filled in when this slide was put together based on Goldfield's IP. We've since done some more. So again, sticking with the green theme, better that when this project is developed, the higher grade portions of almost all the zones very nicely sits on the top. That's important. Keep the the strip ratio to a reasonable level. This being southeast zone. The Deerhorn zone that we were drilling most recently late last year. Again, the lump of the really good stuff sits right in the middle of the thing, not underneath it. And again, you can't see this box here is we just zoom is put on us. Is hiding a couple of things I would show you, but I mean, basically some of the holes that we drilled last fall were truly spectacular. Hole 72, 250, or pardon me, 71 was, we'll start with that one, 110 meters of almost 2.6 grams gold, 0.44% copper. That's over 3 grams copper or gold equivalent. The other 3 holes were all sort of comparable, not as high. That one was the highest, but I mean, 251 meters of over a gram, 0.23 copper, 1.29% copper equivalent. We will be back drilling there when right now the objective is southeast zone, some wildcat step outs for some real discovery opportunities to the northeast, and then we will regroup before we finish this current program and be back drilling this one. And the concept would be we'll be raising money along the way and just keep the drills turning, keep the drill turning. We have one drill operating. So probably running kind of close to my time, so I'll just fast forward through here that we have a budget of, we have revised this to around 1.5 million right now. Being careful, we still expect that we're drilling right now is quite efficient. It's coming in much cheaper than we did last fall, so we should be able to get 10 holes, each sort of averaging somewhere around 500 meters. We've got one completed already. We shut it down at 530 meters, and we're on a second one right now. And again, we believe we're trading at a discount to our peers in terms of multiples. Anyways, so again, this thing all got started. We staked it. We didn't go and buy it. Had a number of partners along the way. 2018 here, we really finalized the deal with Goldfields. We actually bought it from them in 2015, subject to issuing them 19.9% of the stock with a top up that didn't run out until 2018. So I'm going to go right down here, and I'm just going to leave a final slide. This was taken about a week ago. Joel just gone out to the rig to see how we're doing that night, and thank you all for the listening.
Great, thanks a lot, Bill. That was a great presentation. We do have a minute for questions here. Maybe one thing I'd like to ask, we were talking a bit about this before the presentation, but maybe you could just provide some insight on the current situation where you are in BC with respect to wildfires and how that's not really affecting you right now.
Yeah, fortunately, we're okay. Having said that, the Caribou is an area that is inherently slightly arid. It's very hot. I was on site a week ago. Horsefly, the nearest community 10 kilometers away, hit an all-time record, 42 degrees C officially in the shade, which is 108. So we have to be careful. It's cooled off a little bit, but we have no fires which are specifically in our face. We have some extra requirements Forest Services sort of asked us to do, i.e. While we're drilling, there's really no rules. We have water. They're letting us sort of be cautious and careful. While we're moving, we have to do it during certain periods of the day because the heavy equipment is a concern. It could dragging us something with metal over a rock could spark. So we're okay, but we're having to be cognizant.
Great, perfect. So with that, we will have to leave it there, but thank you very much, Bill, for presenting Consolidated Woodjam Copper to us.